Yo, what is up guys? It is Bumfris, back with episode 66 of our Reddit series. This one's going to be some more entitled parents, and I know you're going to love this one. For those of you that are new around here, don't forget that we upload daily, and the best way for you to make sure you never miss a video is to smash that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. Once you've done that, you can sit back, relax, and get annoyed at some entitled parents. I worked for an IKEA store in their small land facility for a couple of years. Overall, the only good thing about the job was the kids, although sometimes we'd get a few kids who were really violent and had to be kicked out. And I had cool co-workers. There are rules about who can and cannot go into small land, like there's a height requirement because of the ball pit. The pit is too deep for kids who are shorter than 37 inches, too shallow for kids taller than 54 inches. Also, kids have to be potty trained, although we do make exceptions for children with disabilities of course. Enter this entitled mum. Her daughter was a few inches above the maximum height, but I had her daughter take off her shoes anyway so she could stand in front of the height marker and be measured. We always had to measure the kids with their shoes off, as they'd have to take them off anyway, so it's no big deal. Even with her shoes off, the daughter was way too tall. She wasn't even upset about it. She took one look at the place and realized that it was designed for little kids, and she's probably 12 years old at least. And she looked totally uninterested. My co-worker is watching this the whole time. I informed the entitled mum that her daughter doesn't meet the height requirements, so we couldn't let her into small land. And she says, "Can't you just make an exception?" And I say, I can't. If she jumps into the ball pit, she could seriously hurt her ankles because it's not deep enough for her. I don't want her to get hurt, and any normal person would find this to be a good thing that I don't want your kid to get hurt. And then she goes on to say, "But there's another kid in there that's taller than her." And she says this with a whiny voice while her daughter rolls her eyes, points to a girl who is nowhere near her daughter's height. And I say, "No, she's not." At this point, my coworker chimes in and says, "We don't have anyone in here that's tall." And my coworker was already becoming annoyed. The entitled mum, who still doesn't care, says, "I promise she won't jump into the ball pit." And my coworker says, "Ma'am, how many times have you told a kid not to do something and they do it anyway? Besides, if I make an exception for you, then I have to do that for everyone, and we might as well not have any rules." My coworker was pretty loud at this point, and quite frankly, I can't blame her, because we dealt with that many parents like this every single shift that we worked. I also quickly pop up and say, "We have this policy for the safety of the kids. I can call my manager who can explain it to you in more depth, but we can't let your daughter in." The entitled mum storms off, daughter in tow. I figured, okay, that wasn't so bad, but I was wrong. She goes into the marketplace entrance, which opens up to the other side of small land where we have an open window and a counter for pickup time. The entitled mum takes out her phone and starts taking pictures of the children in our care. I kid you not. We even had signage that said "Do not do that." But when you're an entitled brat, you do whatever you want, regardless of how creepy it is. So I loudly say to the entitled mum, "You can't take pictures of other people's children," and I step in the path of her phone, so she probably got a weird photo of my forehead. The entitled mum then raises the phone up to get around me, and I'm 5 foot anyway, so my height can't even block her properly, and says, "I need evidence for what you guys have done." This is where my coworker chimes in again and says, "What are you? Some kind of creeper? Stop taking pictures of these kids." And by this point, so many customers are staring at the entitled mum, clearly concerned and disturbed by her behavior. And I say to the entitled mum, "You don't have the right to take pictures of somebody else's child. Do it again and I'm calling security." By the way, our security was really cool, and I was thinking afterwards that I hope the head of security is the one who talks to her, because oh boy, he is a huge guy, like a bouncer's size. Sweetheart, wonderful family man, but intimidating to anyone who doesn't know that. The entitled mum, realizing that I mean business about the security, says, "Fine, whatever, but what you're doing to my daughter isn't fair." She backs off and goes away. My coworker then says to me, "What should we do now? I mean, that was pretty creepy, and we don't know what she's gonna do with those pictures." And I say that I'm just gonna call security anyway. And I did just that. I gave them a full description of the events, what the entitled mum and her daughter looked like, and even said that the kid did nothing wrong of course, and was describing the daughter so they had a perfect match. I told them which direction they went in, and they did go and talk to the entitled mum and explained why she couldn't do that and how serious it was. I also called our manager in the meantime to fill him in on what happened. He was happy about the way we handled it. The kids in our care seemed to be fine. They definitely noticed because we were quite loud. My coworker and I were very honest with the parents and told them a general summary of the events and that our security was handling it. None of those parents were upset. Customers who witnessed it did occasionally come over and ask if everything was okay, or just give their opinions about the entitled mum's behavior. Security came by right as one of the cool customers came up and told us that he witnessed the whole thing and wanted to talk to security to support us and the kids. I thought this was so awesome. It made a creepy situation a lot less creepy, and the customer did speak to security on our behalf. If you are wondering about the state of the pictures, security watched her delete them and confirmed with her that they were off her phone. I thought they had asked her to do it, but they said that she offered to do it and made a big statement about how she didn't want to be arrested for child abuse. Moral of the story, don't be a creepy weirdo and take pictures of other people's kids. I guess I didn't really plan to start the episode off with some creepy entitled mum, but there she is. On a more serious note, it's pretty probable that she didn't have bad intentions in taking the photos. She probably was just trying to use that as evidence that there were other tall children in there, but what makes her entitled is the fact that she wouldn't give up in the first place. You're not just going to walk into a bar or a nightclub with your 12-year-old daughter and say, just make an exception for her. Little bit of an extreme comparison, but you get the point. The summer between my freshman and sophomore years of college, I got an internship at the local Natural History Museum doing exhibit design work. I was in charge of designing and painting a mural to serve as a backdrop for an exhibit on the Underground Railroad. So I got my design approved and materials either collected or ordered, and I was off. Now, for layout, I was in a little circular freestanding room that had 4 entries cut into the wall. There were no doors, but because the whole room was so stagnant, I wasn't safe putting up tarp around all the openings while I was inside, so while working, I taped a big X across them along with a sign provided by the museum. This worked for weeks. I'd of course get the occasional "what are you doing" from kids and parents, and I was always happy to talk about my job, and the kids and parents I interacted with seemed to like me a lot. Until that fateful day. Enter entitled mum and her crappy crotch fruit. I'm up on a stepladder airbrushing some clouds as I'm trying to finish off the background of this thing before the weekend so that I can leave it tarped up for the weekend and get to work on mid-ground stuff on Monday when everything is nice and dry. Suddenly, from behind me, a hand grabs the bottom of my pants and tugs to get my attention. And this entitled kid says, "What are you painting? Can I help?" My slight heart attack at almost falling back into this space where I'd have 100% cracked my head on the wall has me a little frazzled and short-tempered. I step off the ladder and pull off my respirator, guiding the kid out of my space. And I say to them, "Hey sweetie, no you can't help. This is my job, this isn't for fun. My paints in here can be dangerous, especially if you don't have one of these." And I tap on my respirator and ask, "Where are your parents? Let's get you back to them because I'm sure they're worried." He points to a woman sitting on a bench nearby on her phone, so I take his hand and walk up. When we reach her, I say, "Hi ma'am, your son made his way into my workspace, which could be very dangerous for him. I'm in the middle of painting and the fumes can be quite dangerous, not to mention that..." I'm cut off by the entitled mum and she says, "Yeah, I told him he could go paint with you. This is a kids museum, so I didn't think you'd mind." I respond saying, "No, I'm sorry, this exhibit is not open. I cannot be responsible for your child's safety. I need you to keep him out of my area or I'm going to have to call security. I don't have time for this. Besides, the longer I leave that crappy old airbrush, the more likely it is that I'm going to have to spend extra time trying to unclog the thing before I can get back to work." She doesn't like that answer though, and once I'm back at work, she apparently sends her kid over again and just tells him he can do what he wants. I don't notice anything over the racket of this air compressor for the airbrush until I go to step down and work on another section. When I turn around, this effing kid is finger painting with a half-spilled bottle of my very expensive paints. The cost was covered by the museum, but that isn't the point. So I start freaking out at the rotten crotch fruit and grab him by the arm and march him over to his mother. Before we can get 4 steps, she's shrieking her way over. She yells at me, "How dare you put your hands on my son? I'll have your job for this, you ungrateful witch. He just wanted to help. You're stifling his creativity. Don't you want kids to like art?" So I respond saying, "Your kid's help is going to cost me an extra week on this project." It was an exaggeration, but still. I call over my favorite coworker Greg, who was the guard who did the rounds in the little wing that I worked in. Long story short, she shrieks about getting all of us fired, how crappy the museum was, how her husband is a lawyer, and we'll be hearing from them. But even with all the frothing, she was kicked out and I managed to finish the exhibit on time that summer, and everyone seemed to love how it was designed. You know, if this entitled mum had a job, which let's be honest, she probably doesn't, I wonder how she would feel if some random person's kid just started coming and interrupting her while she was trying to work. I know if there was some kid in my house and I was trying to make these videos and they started screaming, I would probably lose it. Entitled parents really are just their own breed of stupid. Some quick backstory, my mum is notorious for getting furious about random minor inconveniences or at people just doing their jobs. Think classic entitlement, but she just keeps on screaming. I was at a small souvenir shop in Canada while I was waiting to get on a cruise. I, for some reason, have a large collection of small figures made of coloured glass or precious stones. At this shop, I found a small jade bear with a fish in its mouth figure and felt like buying it to add something from Canada to my collection. I tell the sweet old lady at the register that I want to buy it and she's getting it ready for me while I get my money out. This store seemed very old fashioned and not very with the times, but it was very cute and well kept. Because of this though, the person at the register used a small calculator to add tax to my purchase. I was completely fine with it and she seemed to be struggling enough with it, so I tried to help her and didn't bother. All while this is happening, my mum is giving the old lady dirty looks from the back of the store. After we left, my mum pulled me aside and demanded that she sees my receipt. She then got enraged that the old lady accidentally added 7% tax instead of the normal 5 or 6%. I didn't really mind because the figure only cost around 30 Canadian dollars, so the tax totaled 6 or 7 cents extra and it was a very high quality figure. She also only did this to me and not any of my other family members who all brought things at the store, but my mum decided to storm into the store and try and lecture this lady about calculating tax correctly. I had to physically stop her from barging into the store and screaming her head off at this lady until she gave me my 6 cents back. After I stopped her, she gave me a lengthy lecture on how the world is scheming against you and everyone wants to scam you. Is it bad that I would walk back in screaming if it was 1 cent more than I was supposed to pay? No, I'm just kidding, but seriously, this was probably more like 30 or 60 cents, but who cares? The entitled mum just sounds like a bit of a conspiracy theorist who thinks everyone's out to get her, but over 1 cent or 6 cents, whatever this was, you really just gotta let it go. I have a feeling something like this might divide opinions though, so let me know what you think in the comments below. I didn't interact with this woman, I only witnessed this since we were a row below in the normal seats just above the wheelchair accessible disabled seats. Small backstory, this was about 5 years ago when my husband was graduating from a community college. It was a miracle that he managed to graduate due to all the wild distractions from his home life. My pregnancy, us getting married, me moving in, stress from hospital visits, his grandpa dying, etc. All within a 6-month time span. Anyway, we were all sitting in this large auditorium and people were filling in. I was about 5 months pregnant and this really skinny middle-aged lady in these huge high-heeled shoes came around the corner and sits in the disabled chairs behind me. Nobody says anything, but I'm just wondering why she thought it was okay to sit in those seats clearly marked for people that can't get around that well. She's in these ridiculous shoes and it's very clear that she can walk. Security taps her on the shoulder and asks if she was disabled and she says yes, without showing any credentials. She then starts talking on the phone and complains to the person on the other line how security spoke to her about where she was sitting. She was getting quite loud, especially when security returned to confront her. The entitled mum argued that she wasn't able to move into the normal seats because of her high-heeled shoes. She looked thin enough that if she stepped wrong in them, she could break her ankle and fall and truly disable herself. Security did not care and politely asked her to move to a regular seat or leave. She began to yell at the security guards, insisting that she was staying put to watch her son graduate. Security and the entitled mum went back and forth for another moment before she finally gave up, cussed out security, and left. It was a good thing too, because I was 5 seconds away from my hormonal self yelling at how hard we fought making it to see my husband graduate college after everything we've gone through, and how I wasn't going to let her entitlement ruin a happy family moment. It still gets my blood boiling thinking about it. You simply don't wear high heels to a huge auditorium with stairs. Well, I guess there's entitlement and then there's just being a terrible person. It would have been interesting if someone in a wheelchair or maybe crutches had have come and was needing a seat. From the way it sounds though, I have a feeling this entitled mum probably wouldn't have moved an inch. Alright everyone, that is that for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm just going to take a second to plug a couple of my social medias, including our Discord server. I do have a Twitter and an Instagram if you want to follow me on both of those. They are both at Bumfris and feel free to send me a message and I'll do my best to respond. I also just want to take a second to say thank you so much for all the love lately, all of the comments, the likes, the subscribers, just the fact that you guys tune in and watch my videos every day, it really does make my day. Every single one of you is the backbone of this channel and I really cannot express how much I appreciate that. Without you guys, this channel would be nothing and I love making these videos for you guys and I love the fact that you enjoy them. So on that note, I will wrap things up for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to take a second again to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day and I'll see you all in the next episode of Entitled Parents. Bye.